it's Sandra. Welcome to another episode of Asexualise, my asexual life. This is a place to be for education about asexuality, all things asexual. I share my asexual life journey in order to help you in yours. So please subscribe and hit the bell icon right now. So if you ever wondered what it would be like to be asexual and in a relationship, I know there's quite a lot of asexuals in my dating groups who really long for a relationship, but they can't find someone suitable for a relationship. And there's other asexuals that aren't bothered about a relationship. And there's some asexuals that are in relationships with sexuals. So in my asexual perspectives book, you'll find some asexuals that are doing just that. Some are in relationships with sexuals and some aren't in relationships at all. So let's dive in and see what we have in here. So yeah, I'm also going to be touching on some people who aren't in a relationship and why, basically, or how they think about being in a relationship. So Philippa, who opens up the book, in terms of other people's stories, she says no relationship for her, never again, thank you. I will have a house full of dogs, adopted children, and maybe a rabbit and hamster. That is all I want and need. So if you read Philippa Duke's story in this book, it really draws you in and you really feel for Philippa. And it's a very difficult story in the sense that obviously it's real life and it's quite traumatic experience she went through, I think. And I can understand why she doesn't want a relationship again. So yes. So Cassidy's story. So Cassidy is married to a very sexual, bisexual, genderqueer man type person. That's how he describes himself. It works because we are completely honest with each other. My coming out as asexual actually helped because he thought that I just didn't want to have sex with him. But now he understands that I don't want to have sex with anyone. We do have sex fairly regularly, once a weekish, but it's kind of like I know he does things for me that he doesn't enjoy, i.e., watching bad TV, clothes shopping, because I like it and he wants to spend time with me. And so I have sex with him because he likes it and I want to spend time with him, but I get to pick the music. If he asks if we can have sex and I don't want to, I say no and he respects that. I think that's a very healthy asexual sexual relationship, to have that kind of understanding and compromise if you're not sex repulsed and disgusted by it. Because obviously, if you're so disgusted, you just feel sick, you're not going to want to do that. But if I look back to my past sexual relationships, particularly the last long-term one I was in, it was like a case of I wasn't really interested in that. I'd rather have done the washing up, and I hate washing up. But I love kissing, and because my ex kissed me a lot and he did a lot of touching with me, which I liked at the time, I don't usually do. Well, I don't usually have me being touched nowadays, but I did used to like that. And it was kind of like sex was the thing after that, that because he was doing the stuff I liked, I was more open to having sex with him because that's what he wanted, and I wanted him to be happy and getting pleasure also. That was the ultimate pleasure for him, even if it wasn't really for me, because the kissing and the touching was much more pleasurable for me. But it's in terms of being sexually healthy, if you're not sex repulsed and you're sex positive or sex indifferent, don't mind doing it, don't mind not doing it, I think this is a good compromise, a good shared experience, because it seems like in this situation, neither party is angry or begrudging or peed off at the other person. It seems like the sexual person is okay doing it once a week. They don't need to have it more than that. But if the asexual doesn't want to do it, they can say no thanks, you know what I mean? So I think there's less pressure on that asexual person, which is much better. And most guys on average want it at least 3 times a week, so once a week is probably a lot better for them. And I think it does help that he is bisexual in this case, and he identifies as genderqueer, because I think for an asexual person to be married to someone like that, it's more of a relief than, for example, a heterosexual person, because a queer person, someone who's bisexual, understands the difficulties of being different in sexuality, of being a minority sexual orientation. Whereas a lot harder, for example, for a heterosexual to understand some of the things you emotionally go through when you are different to the majority of the world population. You know, it can be really hard being a minority sexual orientation where are less people who are understanding of you than a heterosexual, for example. It's harder when you're talking about sex to a sexual person. If I'm talking about sex on this channel and I'm talking about educationally, I don't have a problem with that. But when a sexual person starts talking to me about sex, it depends on how they do it. But if they're doing it for sexual gratification, it just feels disgusting to me. So while I'm all for sex education and talking about it in a really good way, if a guy makes it really personal to me and he's just looking to get some sexual gratification into talking to me about it, it really puts me off, and I don't like it. Whereas I feel these people that are married, asexual and bisexual, I feel that they've got a nice balance going on and understanding between each other. And like they say, it works because they're completely honest with each other. I think if you are going to have a relationship which is asexual plus sexual mix, you've got to be a lot honest and open, because it's never going to work else, because you could end up with resentment and things like that. So I think it's imperative that you discuss things and what your thoughts and feelings and emotions are. I think that's really important, so there's no grudges or resentment or anger built up. So Molly's story: are you currently in a relationship? I have many friendships, some with sexual people and some with LGBTQ plus people. I come out to my friends at the very beginning of our relationship, so they and I are on the same page. I like to communicate to my friends that I am aromantic and asexual and constantly discuss our comfort zones in the relationship regarding sex and romance. I have one close friend who is aromantic and asexual like me, and that friendship is very special to me. It's less complicated, but sometimes gets very intense in a good way. Yeah, so some asexuals, they have very close friendships that would be closer than I would consider the average friendship to be. So some aromantic asexuals have relationships with their friends, as in a friendship, which does things that other people would only do in an actual romantic relationship. For example, some aromantic asexuals will sit cuddling on a sofa together in front of the TV. Now, if you were to be in a relationship with a heterosexual person, monogamous heterosexual person, then they usually wouldn't like you going around cuddling your friends sat in front of the TV, because they would usually see that as cheating, the majority of them, because you're having physical intimacy with another person. So it's really important that if you get into a relationship with a sexual person and you're an asexual who likes cuddling your friends, or even if you get into a relationship with another asexual, if you get into a relationship with someone else, make sure that they understand and are comfortable with you being you, basically, cuddling other people and friends. So if they're not comfortable with that, obviously you wouldn't be compatible and as you are, and you don't want to have to change yourself to please another person if you're happy with the way you are, right? Some are romantic asexuals, they couldn't live without cuddling their friends. It's a very important, intimate thing that they need in their life to feel comforted and supported and cherished and adored. Whereas other people, like me, I don't believe in going around cuddling my friends. Hug to hello and goodbye, but not cuddling. To me, that's reserved for a romantic relationship or dating scenario. Um, right, so Anon's story. I am currently in a relationship that has lasted since October 26, 2013. This book came out in 2017. We had a rough patch that lasted from August 2015 to January 2016. But other than that, we mostly get along. He is most certainly not asexual. He is heterosexual. Other than him trying to get me into sex, we are great together for the most part. We have a best friends aspect to us, and I enjoy intimate, non sexual moments. As for the non penetration sexual acts he tries with me, I don't care for it, but I compromise on it. I don't hate it, but I'm more apathetic about it. He assumes my physical arousal is me being turned on, even though I feel nothing in regard to sexual desire. So, yeah, that's where it gets very tricky and grey areas, isn't it? For asexuals who experience arousal, like I experience arousal, can experience high levels of arousal, but have zero sexual attraction, and so it doesn't really work a lot of the signs with asexuals of body language like it would do with sexuals. So with sexuals, there's certain body languages. That means if they do certain gestures, if they have their body in certain ways, you would say they're sexually attracted to a person even if they might deny it. Because psychology says that this is what they're really meaning or really thinking in their brain. But obviously, excuse me, asexuals can have sexual behavior but zero sexual attraction. So that's when it becomes very difficult to read someone if they're asexual. Because often sexual guys will think, oh, this person must love sex if we're kissing a lot and they're smiling and they don't mind being touched on what, and then they find out later the person doesn't, unless you tell them there and then, you know what I mean? And so they can read you wrong. So, yes, Stephen Smith's story. Are you currently in a relationship? Yes, it's a wonderful relationship. Very little kissing and even a little sex. I do what I have to keep the relationship. If I enjoy being with her, I do whatever it takes to make her happy, but I try not to think about it. So, yeah, that's another person, Stephen, who's in a relationship with a sexual person. So, there are asexuals who have relationships with sexuals. Some work well, others don't work so well. But all of these in this book, they tend to work, the majority of them. Marnie's story. I have been married for 25 years to a sexual person. This is Asexual Perspectives book, by the way. You can grab a copy on Amazon. Reduced at the moment on Kindle, just especially for Asexual Perspectives Awareness Month. Go and grab a copy now. It's usually inexpensive anyway, but it's really, really inexpensive at the moment. Go and grab a copy. That's only till the end of July, people. I have been married for 25 years to a sexual person. I was a sexual being for years, but all of a sudden it was gone. No reason, no explanation. Here one day, gone the next. It took a major toll on our relationship for years until I found out I was, asexual. Now we communicate on a much deeper level. We are taking it day by day, but it is working. Since he is such a sexual, manly man, I have agreed to participate once a week, but I do not want to. He understands it is only for him. Yeah, that's the only thing. Like, I've read Marnie's story in here, and she seems really happy with her husband. But when she says she doesn't want to, and she's still doing it, I personally think that's kind of wrong in the sense that if you really don't want to do something, you shouldn't have to do it. But as you heard from Stephen, he does things to keep the relationship. So it's difficult, isn't it? Because that's a person's choice. It's your choice if you want to do something to keep a relationship. But if you're having to have sex to keep a relationship, then you could also say, like, you're trying to do something on purpose that you might not like to keep the relationship. And it's debatable Whether that's a good thing or not, only you can decide, you know? If you think it's worth it, then, it's worth it, right? Each person has to decide from themselves on that. So, Joe's story, are you currently in a relationship? I am not, and doubt I will ever be again. If I ever did have another relationship, it would have to be with an asexual. I miss having a reliable companion for adventures like camping, board games, dinners, etc. But at my age, it is difficult to find new friends who have available time. I don't know if this person says their age. So sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Oh, they're 55. So yeah. Let's move on. So yeah, there are older asexuals in this book. So it's Adora's story. My husband is allosexual, but he has asked me about asexuality and he understands to a certain extent how I feel. As I am sex positive, we do negotiate times to have sex. He will let me know in advance that he's interested, and unless I'm really not feeling up to it, I'll have sex with him. It works out well for us in that he gets to have the sex he wants while my boundaries are respected. So another asexual that's in a relationship with a heterosexual or sexual person. So yeah. So it's interesting because this person feels it works out well for them. And I think if you're not sex repulsed, then it can work out really well. I wasn't repulsed years ago by sex. I didn't really like it, didn't really want it in the sense of, oh, I wasn't thinking about it, but I did it. I did it more because I felt I had to as part of a normal relationship. But I didn't mind, it was consensual. I'd rather have been doing other things, but it was okay to do that, Actually, the last person I had sex with, it was good experience. It wasn't bad at all. And I was with them in total for 8.5 years. So, it wasn't bad. I didn't dislike it with them, but it's not something I actually thought I wanted to do, if you know what I mean. I didn't look at them and think I want sex with you now. Do you know what I mean? I just knew that they were sexual, and looking back, they're probably quite a lot sexual because they used to try and instigate sex a lot. But a lot of the time, we used to end up doing like touching and kissing more, I would say, overall. So yeah, but we were always kissing. I liked that. I didn't like being with him in the end, but I liked the kissing because he wasn't a nice person in the end. But yeah, it was fine sexually, but not in other ways. So I think it's good if if you are sex positive or don't mind doing that, and the guy gets, if it's it doesn't really matter what gender it is, but if the person you're with gets the sex they want and you still feel your boundaries are respected, and that you're okay with the amount of times you do it and everything, and feel comfortable enough to do it, then I think it works out okay. Like, I didn't know I was asexual years ago, but my ex did used to comment a lot. So clearly there was a lot of times when I didn't want sex and said it. Because he used to say stuff like, "Oh, are you a lesbian? I think you're a lesbian because of the way you're acting." And I'm like, no. So even back then, I used to hate nudity on TV, for example, and then he used to accuse me of being lesbian because I hate nudity. So if I hate naked women on TV, why would I be a lesbian when I hate naked women's bodies? It doesn't make sense. So yeah, I just think he was using that as an excuse because he wanted to look at that, to be honest. But he used to say stuff like that, but I've never been a lesbian. But I didn't like the fact he was gawking at naked women. It's horrible. I think he used to do stuff when I was working, to be honest. Like watch stuff. Well, at one time when he was being horrible to me, he was like, "Oh, I did this, like masturbated over a pop star, basically." And this is when we split. We actually was together for a year and a half, split up, and then I got back with him for another 7 years after a 6 month split, which should never have happened, but it did. And so yeah, he was no good for me, so I should never have got back with him, but I did. Um, so yeah, but when we actually split up after a year and a half, he was trying to be nasty and saying, "Oh, while you've been at work, I've been doing like masturbating over this pop singer." just to pee me off, you know? It wasn't very nice. It was horrible. But then, looking back, he probably was doing a lot of that type of thing anyway, and I didn't even know about it. But I hate it when guys do that. That's why I really would prefer to find someone for a relationship who didn't watch porn. Because I feel like it's cheating if you're in a relationship with someone. You shouldn't be going around looking at someone else who's naked. That's my personal opinion. I know loads of people would disagree with me, and the majority of people watch porn, and a lot of asexuals watch porn as well. But I just find it disgusting, and I would rather be in a relationship with someone, if I ever get into a relationship with someone who doesn't watch that. Um, so Anne's story. Are you currently in a relationship? Yes, I am, with my boyfriend, who I can truthfully say is the only person I have loved in such a way. I don't believe he's asexual, though he does have a certain level of discomfort, perhaps aversion to discussing sex sometimes, especially with anyone who he's not with. I would say he's a heteromantic heterosexual, but I don't think he's ever been with someone he fully trusted or even felt completely comfortable around. He was the first to admit that he didn't think he had ever been in love before, to the same conclusion I eventually came to when trying to figure out why this relationship with him was so different than the ones I had before. So I do think that's lovely. That Anna's found someone who she truly feels loved by and loved with, and that he feels the same. So yeah, I think that's a beautiful, beautiful um story, you know. I love this story. This story, pay attention to. Darcy's story, page 437. Go and grab a copy of this book. It's really good. Are you currently in a relationship? I am currently in a long-term relationship with a bisexual person. It's working out wonderfully because this person understands asexuality. They even researched it when I told them, and they were of the opinion that they could do without sex to be with me, meaning that they respect and care enough that it wasn't ever an issue. I love it. So Darcy is the one in Asexual Perspectives book that's actually in a relationship with a sexual person and not having sex, because Darcy's partner would rather be with them without sex than without them. And so I think this is really important, you know, that some asexuals can actually be in relationships with sexuals and it still work out even though they don't have sex, because obviously we've read quite a lot of stories in here where asexuals are in relationships with sexuals and they are having sex, compromising. Some of them really enjoying the compromise and others not so much, you know, like not thinking about it and, you know, doing whatever they can to keep the relationship and not really wanting to do it. So I personally don't think you should be having sex if you really don't want it and don't like it, because it can feel like you're abusing yourself, if you know what I mean. So you've got to be very careful that if and when you do have sex with a sexual person, if you decide you're going to do that, is that you're comfortable enough with the amount of sex you're having. If not, you need to speak up, because, you know, the worst thing you can do is to be doing something you're not wanting to do to keep a relationship going and it actually becomes harmful and hurtful to you. You don't want to be doing that. You want to live in peace and harmony with yourself and the other person as much as possible. But always talk about these things. It's always difficult when it's an asexual and sexual relationship, because Darcy, you know, is one story in amongst a lot of stories where their partner is actually not having sex and still enjoying being in a relationship with them. So, yeah, out of 47 stories in the book, you know, but there are people who are asexual in relationships with other people who are asexual. I know two young couples who are married to their asexual partners. They're both asexuals and they love being with each other. They're happily married, you know, and it's nice when that happens. It's really beautiful. So never give up hope. You know, someone has to accept you for who you are in order to fully love you. And it's hard when you've got a sexual mismatch, you know, but if you can find common ground, and if you're not sex repulsed, then, you know, you're okay to have sex. And I think it's easier for you to find someone than a sex repulsed asexual like me, for example. But it's still hard out there because a lot of the guys I find on dating sites, a lot of them are just into hookups, casual relationships, random things, sexual stuff, hook up, you know, like it's hook up, flings, random things, casual things. You know, it's like there's someone on Facebook dating who's actually got in his profile, he's not into flings and random stuff. That's not his thing. And I thought, thank God. It's really refreshing to actually be able to message someone like that and see that they're different, because the amount of people on that, he's a guy, so that must be what women are after on there a lot as well. But Badu is really kind of like very sexually driven, and they do have an asexual category. But so far, I've only met 7 asexuals on the spectrum across the whole. I say met, I haven't actually messaged them all. Only a couple, but the rest, you know, they're on the spectrum. But some of them are on the much more sexual end of the spectrum, which is no good for me anyway. But yeah, always be happy with what you're doing. Make sure it's consensual. Make sure you have open, honest communication with any relationships you have about what you like, what you don't like, about what turns you on, what turns you off, what makes you feel good and excited and elated, and what doesn't, so that you can come to terms with, like, is this relationship going to work? Can we make it work? Are we going to be happy and comfortable? Or are we just going to be fighting? You know, that's not what you want. You don't want fighting. Anyway, I hope you found this video useful, helpful, insightful. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an episode. Happy Asexual Perspectives Awareness Month. Grab a copy of Asexual Perspectives on Amazon. It's reduced on Amazon at the moment, especially for Asexual Perspectives Awareness Month. Go and grab it before the end of July, when it will go back up in price. But go and grab it. It's a good price anyway, but it's even better at the moment. Lots of discount off. Love you lots. Take care. Bye. See you soon.